New Genesis has fallen. What will the new gods do now? The new gods have fled from their home on New Genesis. Now, their escape craft has broken through Earth's orbit. Luckily, the Justice League is there. Okay, I've helped the ship route more power to the rear. Impact should be reduced. Cyborg informs the team. Superman leaps into the air and flies into the ship, using his super strength to slow its descent. Still pretty heavy, he gasps as he pushes with all his might. Even slowed, and with Superman pushing against it, the ship slams into the Earth, creating a massive crater and causing fire to erupt from the impact. The Justice League quickly clears the smoke and watches as the new gods depart the ship. Orion and Mr. Miracle watch nearby with their heroic friends. Their personal fight was forgotten at the arrival of their family. Strange, don't you think? We find the child just as war breaks out on New Genesis? Scott Free notes. Orion nods his head. And the gods make ground only a short distance from us. From him, Orion adds, motioning to the child nearby. The newest god. Metron sees all. He watches as the new gods greet the Justice League. How the heroes meet the young child of prophecy. Now, the child is safe, no longer pursued by mysterious forces. The boy is safe. Metron smiles. He can see every step he took to get to this point, steering the new gods with prophecy. Not a bad result for a Doomcrow, he thinks to himself. But his thoughts are interrupted as Akala, the gatekeeper, finds him in the ship. Metron, the Highfather will speak to the heroes of Earth who have come to our aid. Will you not join us? Akala asks, but Metron shakes his head. He sits upon his chair, and his image begins to waver. His body breaks up, and he smiles as light shines around him. My work here is done, and elsewhere it has not yet begun. There are threads that need to be pulled, and it seems to me your troubles have only just begun. Metron notes before disappearing in a burst of light. Akala watches the place where Metron was in confusion, but looks up at the thumping sounds of approaching helicopters. Outside, Superman looks up at the 3 military choppers as they come in for a landing. The boot hath arrived, Green Arrow whispers in disgust. Superman glances over his shoulder as Orion and Scott approach them. The ship is of New Genesis, Superman. They come here because their home has fallen to war. I will not stand to be mistreated or threatened, Orion warns. Superman nods and puts a hand on his friend's shoulder to calm him. I need you to stay calm, Orion, the Man of Steel states. He turns back to the choppers as soldiers disembark and stand guard over the recent arrivals. A female agent stalks towards Superman with a folder in hand. Superman, Agent Chase of the Department of Extra-Normal Operations, the woman says. The Justice League has this handled, Superman tells her shortly, but the woman raises an eyebrow at him. Under what jurisdiction? She asks. Miss Chase, they've just escaped a war and found their way here, Superman starts to explain, but Agent Chase shakes her head and cuts him off, reminding him that she is under the authority of the DEO, and the Justice League doesn't get to dictate international policy on housing extraterrestrials. Unless you intend to house them on the Watchtower, she finishes. She holds up her files, explaining that she is under orders to take any precautions necessary to ensure the safety of mankind. Behind them, one of the soldiers raises his weapon. But Orion moves fast, crossing the ground and reaching out quickly. He grabs hold of the man's weapon and crumples it in his bare hands. You will not point a weapon at my people, Orion growls. The rest of the soldiers turn and raise their weapons, immediately opening fire. But Scott is there, blocking bullets to prevent Orion from harm. Hal reaches out for Orion with a green hand, pulling the warrior away and de-escalating the situation. Agent Chase glances at the conflict before returning her sights to Superman. She explains that she understands what the new gods are capable of, and that for the safety of mankind, they are going to be brought to a secure facility until the DEO can ascertain what is to be done with them. Unless, of course, you're going to stand in my way, Superman? Is that a line you're drawing in the sand? She asks. But John Stewart has had enough. He steps forward and walks between the group. Superman arguing with the government agent. Scott, Orion, and Hal arguing with the soldiers. That's enough of that. Refugees are welcome, John says as he holds up his ring. Green constructs begin to appear, assembling a building before everyone's eyes. Agent Chase quickly steps towards the Green Lantern. You can't do this, she growls at him. But John shrugs. Agent Chase, I just did. I know you have authorization and a badge. I know what that's like. I have a badge of sorts too. But you shouldn't need a rule book to tell you when something's right, John tells her. I say this not as a lantern, or as a member of the Justice League, or even as a superhero. I say this as a soldier. All life is sacred and worth protecting, John tells her as he motions the new gods into the sanctuary that he's created. Elsewhere, Mr. Terrific and Miss Martian are moving through the woods, away from the conflict. Mr. Terrific explains that his sensors picked up something else falling at the same time as the ship. The two heroes step out of the woods into a recently burned clearing. Something definitely landed here, and then went through a lot of effort to cover it up, Terrific tells his friend. Miss Martian nods her head. So the worrying question is, where did they go? She whispers. Meanwhile, in an industrial warehouse outside Bengaluru, Maxwell Lord watches as his mercenaries tie down the strange craft to a hauling truck. He nods and turns to his new guests. You understand my suspicions. You just happened to be there at the same moment we landed. Coincidence is in the realm of the gods, is it not, Mr. Lord? Darkseid says as he turns to Lord. I did mention divine intervention, Lord says with a smile and a shrug. He motions to their new visitor as Metron steps from the shadows. Anger flashes across Darkseid's face as he steps forward and shakes an angry fist at the god of knowledge. You failed to mention that half of New Genesis would be arriving here in search of the prophesized child, Darkseid snarls. But Metron shakes his head, reminding the current ruler of Apocalypse that if it were not for him and Highfather's ability to open a boom tube, then Darkseid and the others would be cowering to the Niktari on Apocalypse. The pieces are all set as I had intended them to be, Metron promises. Meanwhile, in their new sanctuary, Orion seeks out Shadowfall, questioning where Solus is amongst the refugees. Shadowfall looks up sadly, explaining that Solus fell in the battle, and that it is only through his sacrifice that the new gods were able to escape. Saddened, Orion takes his leave and heads into the woods. There, he allows his grief to overtake him. He falls to his knees and lets out an anguished cry, sending a blast of energy into the sky. Finally, the scream fades from his lips, and he sags in defeat. Mr. Orion? The young boy, a newly born god, calls out as he steps up to the warrior. I'm sorry for hurting you before. I didn't mean it, and I wanted to ask. Are you okay? The young boy asks. Orion looks at him in shock for a moment, and the boy sits with him in a moment of silence. Meanwhile, Maxwell Lord stands with Metron and those of Apocalypse.
If the boy is who we think he will become, we must find a way to show him his destiny,
Granny Goodness points out. Maxwell Lord nods his head, explaining that he has a new idea about how to acquire the child, and has a man on it as they speak. Near the sanctuary, the DEO has set up a secure perimeter. One of the soldiers moves through the woods, checking in on the radio, but he stops short as a cowboy steps out of the shadows and raises his revolver. Bang, the cowboy says with a smile. The soldier suddenly twists through the air and is sucked out of existence, his radio falling to the ground, forgotten as the cowboy moves off towards the sanctuary. Long ago, Isaiah, the new god known as Highfather, looks down on his greatest love as she dies in his arms. Behind them, Darkseid stalks away. Anger overwhelms Isaiah, and he turns his wrath on the followers of Darkseid. When the war finally ends, Isaiah discards his armor and weapons, walking towards a doorway in reality. A passage to the source. Inside, he is overtaken by blinding white light and granted the power of the Highfather. Now, Isaiah sits within the new sanctuary for the gods on Earth. Behind him, Akala leads Superman to their leader. Highfather, Akala calls. Thanks to Kal-El and the heroes of this world, we have been offered to stay, so we may regroup, rebuild, and perhaps, Akala begins to say. But Isaiah stands and bows before the Man of Steel, thanking him for his aid. If we can ever repay this debt, we will. You have my word. I am sorry for any trouble all of this may have caused, Isaiah says softly before turning and walking away. Akala and Superman watch as Highfather disappears into the shadows. He's been like this since we lost Solus, the God of Doors explains. Superman nods in understanding. He turns as Scott Free approaches. They're all hurting, Superman. Gods who have been reminded of their mortality. They've lost their home, their friends. They need something to hold on to, Scott tells him. Superman reaches out and puts a hand on his friend's shoulder. Sometimes, even gods need reminding of the value of the little things. Sit down, breathe, count the ones still here. Remember the ones who were lost, Superman suggests. Scott ponders on these words for a moment. Suddenly, he smiles and nods. Actually, I think I know just the thing, he says as he turns away and pulls off his mask. Scott stands before his people and looks at the huddled survivors. Hear me, gods of Sirtuin, fallen but not lost. Hear me and make ground here, as I have. If I may boldly suggest this new place have a name. New Light, Scott tells them. He turns his eyes on his wife, the warrior known as Barda. As is tradition upon breaking new ground, all must heed my call for Winhyeth, the feast of the gods, Scott tells his people. Meanwhile, Mr. Terrific and Miss Martian have tracked the signal of the crashed ship to a Lord Industrial warehouse. He didn't hide his tracks much, Miss Martian notes as they head inside. The pair begin to move through the boxes, discovering computer tech designed to view deep space imaging fields. They knew to look for whatever was coming long before we did, Miss Martian notes as she taps through the computer. Mr. Terrific turns his head as armed mercenaries enter the warehouse. Whatever crashed at the second site was brought here, and they left in a hurry, he notes to Miss Martian. She turns to him, offering to pull what information she can from the computers. I'll buy us some time, Terrific tells her with a nod. His T-spheres begin to float around the room, hitting the mercenaries with concussive blasts. But 3 slip in from the side and raise their weapons at Miss Martian. She turns an alien gaze upon them. Now, what good are bullets against a threat you've barely begun to understand? She hisses at them. The mercs' rifles begin to warp before their eyes, becoming strange creatures from beyond the depths of mortal understanding. The men scream with fear and fall to the floor. "What did you do?" Mr. Terrific asks when he rejoins his friend. Miss Martian shrugs as she finishes on the computer. "Encouraged them to question their affinity for firearms," she explains. She holds up a flash drive. "Lord left a trail an imbecile could have followed, which means there were others here that he does not want us to see," she says as they fly away. Meanwhile, the lone cowboy steps out of the forest before new light. Akala turns as the cowboy approaches and smiles. "Seraphin, what a surprise! I have not seen you in an age," he calls as he hugs the cowboy. Seraphin smiles back. "I came as soon as I heard the call for help from the mother box. You wouldn't mind if I stayed for dinner, would you?" "Never one to turn down a call for Win Yeth," Seraphin explains. Akala motions him inside, and the two join the great feast. The heroes of Earth mingle with the gods of New Light, enjoying each other's company and sharing tales of adventure and heroics. Finally, the Highfather stands at the head of the table and kindly calls for silence. "I wanted to thank you all for your help, your welcome, and this feast, but I have been unable to find the words," Highfather says softly. He holds up his shepherd's staff and places it on the table. "My heart is broken. I fought so hard to save a dream, yet I failed to save the children that came of it. I call myself Highfather no more. You must choose amongst yourselves a new hand to hold the Hika," Highfather tells them before turning away from the table. "I will be Isaiah once again," he says over his shoulder before leaving. Shocked by this news, the new gods all look at each other before everyone's eyes slowly turn to Orion with expectations. Meanwhile, Darkseid stands with Maxwell Lord and peers at the monitors before him.
"Are you sure of this anomaly, Lord?"
Lord nods his head and shows images of the black hole they've been observing. He explains that black holes pull in everything around them and give off no energy or information. "But this one is special," he whispers. He explains that it has been giving off information. "I think it is an echo of reality beyond our own. A strange, skewed mirror that was formed with Darkseid's death," Lord explains. He reaches up and begins to scratch at the Omega symbol that has been burned into his forehead. "What if he never died, Darkseid? What if he is yet looking through the glass at us? What if he is, with his mere presence, expressing a gravity so vast that it eats space and swallows light? What if he is?" Lord whispers. Behind them, Granny Goodness enters the chamber, clad for battle.
"The meddler's prophecy, the story of a child. If he is to be the reflection that Darkseid seeks upon this side of the cosmic mirror, then we must bring this child to him," she growls. Lord nods as he turns to the woman. "When we take this boy, they will come for him. Our window will close fast," Lord tells her. Granny motions to the Furies at her back. "You and Darkseid and your traitor must make sure to do your part. The Furies and good old Goodness will hold back the rest of them," she explains. Back at New Light, Isaiah sits under a tree and looks out on their new home. Above, rain begins to fall. He turns his gaze upon Scott and Barda as they come forward.
their child bundled against the weather. Isaiah, Barda and I, Scott begins to say. Finally, he takes his daughter in his arms and holds her out for the former ruler of the New Gods. This is Olivia, my daughter, Scott says. The baby smiles and giggles at the old man. Isaiah smiles and takes the baby girl, cradling the future of his people in his arms. And that was the complete story for issues 7 and 8 of The New Gods by Ram V. If you enjoyed this and want to support the industry, go check it out at your local comic shop. This start of a new arc in The New Gods was pretty good, and I'm excited to see what happens next, and if we are truly going to see the return of Darkseid soon. But what did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and like and subscribe for new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm Dan with Comicstorian, and we will see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.